Well, today on Plant Life Project, we're going to get back to basics on how to get houseplants started growing in your fish tank. I've got a brand new plant that just came in. I'm excited to show you. And with it, we're going to walk step by step on how to prepare houseplants to grow in water in a riparium. And I'll show you one of my secrets for growing these riparian plants in fish tanks that'll help save you money in the long term. So let's get started by unboxing this new addition. So what is this plant? It's called a mini monstera, or a mini split leaf monstera, but it's actually not even a monstera at all, but a relative, if you will, called Rhaphidophora tetrasperma. It's native to parts of Asia, and it's a vining plant that gets about 6 to 8 feet tall, and it needs bright light and consistent moisture, which is why I'm going to grow it in a riparium. And just check out the cool leaf patterns. It's so unique. Well, let's take our new plant here and we're going to walk through the process step by step on how to prepare most houseplants for riparian plant life in a fish tank. So whether it's a pothos, a peace lily, monstera, lucky bamboo, whatever, the steps are pretty much going to be the same. Take the plant out of the container and inspect the roots to make sure they are healthy. If they are dark and mushy with a bad odor, then the plant has root rot, and do not use it in your tank. So these are white and firm, healthy roots, so no problem here. Another thing to watch out for are roots that are pot bound or root bound, tightly wrapped around each other into the distinct shape of the container. If they are root bound, then you may need to cut off the bottom part of the root mass so you can work the rest of the roots loose. Now let's work the potting soil out of the roots by hand as much as you can. You may need a stick to gently tease the soil out of the roots. Then wash the roots gently in a bucket of water to help remove even more soil. If you're having trouble removing potting soil by hand, then use a pressurized water from a garden hose or faucet to remove the remainder of the potting mix. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it does need to be thorough. Also wash the leaves to remove any residues of fungicide or other chemicals that may have been used. If the roots are long, go ahead and trim them back about halfway. Most of the roots will die off anyway as the plant adapts to the water, and new roots will take their place. The container I'm using is a DIY basket planter, which I like to use for my larger tanks. For smaller tanks, I use shower caddies or DIY egg crate planters. Check out the video link in the description for how to make these DIY riparium planters. Well, now let's talk about substrate and get this planted. I'm using leca as the planting medium or the substrate. I mostly use lava rock, which is equivalent to leca in my opinion, but it may not be available to everyone. They are both highly porous, creating ideal surface area for beneficial bacteria to colonize, which helps break down waste in your fish tank, and it also makes nutrients more available to the plant roots to absorb. Also, the large spacing between the leca or lava rock allow for oxygenated water to flow freely through and around the roots, which is important for a healthy root system. Now that it's planted, you can hang the plant on the back of the tank with cable ties and hooks or clamps, or create a PVC platform like I have done in this 75-gallon tank, but I recommend hanging the planters from the back. Expect your plants to go through a transition as they adapt, which I discuss in more detail in a previous video, which is linked below. Well, now I want to share with you a secret on how I save money, I think, on plants over the long term. You know, if you're living this plant life like me and you're building new setups, you're experimenting with plants all the time, sometimes the experiments fail. Sometimes you lose plants. But I may want to try that plant again because maybe that particular plant wasn't getting the right growth requirement it needed. Maybe it needed more light, more nutrients, different substrate, whatever. Or maybe I'm trying out something totally new that I've never done before, and it feels risky, like if I lose this plant, then I might lose the money that I've spent on it. Many times what I will do when I get a new plant is I will pot it up as a regular house plant in potting soil, and I'll propagate it through cuttings. I'll use those cuttings to experiment with in the riparium. Or if I have a plant that is made up of multiple individuals in one container, like a peace lily for example, I'll divide it in halves or thirds or whatever, and use some of those to experiment with in the riparium, and then have some potted up as regular house plants. This way I have backup plants in case the experiment fails and I want to try it again. And it really helps to mitigate that fear of failure and keeps me open to trying out new plants. Then the next thing you know, I've got a house full of plants, and I get a greenhouse and it's full of plants, and I realize I've got multiple plant syndrome and I've got multiple tank syndrome. It's called Plant Life Project for a reason. But what a wonderful plant life it is.